favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Public comment, if we have any. There's nobody in the room and nobody on queue on the Zoom, on the meeting electronically. So no public comment this evening. Item 4, discussion. Update from town staff on the town farms, Streska property.
Just a quick update. I'm just going to hand out the approved site plan. I'm sure you all probably have seen that. Just a quick reminder of what the Wetland Commission approved and what the Planning and Zoning Commission approved.
Thank you, Ray.
Subcommittee's plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the site plan from a set of construction documents prepared by Zuvik that will be utilized for the bid specifications and the remedial action plan that will take place this summer. Zuvik and Steve Sopelak are working on the technical specifications and also incorporating those specifications into the bid documents. The remedial action plan had to be advertised by DEEP for a 30-day public notice period. That period had passed, and there were no comments. And the remedial action plan includes the removal of the soil, as well as all the site grading for the development plan you see before us, what we talked about, the access in, the pad site, the parking area, areas retained for the future rain gardens, that circle in the middle of the parking area, and that oblong area to the left of that circle, and then the one paved handicap parking space with that concrete sidewalk accessing a future barn in the access to the rear of that building at some point. And then the community garden area off to the right, kind of tucked away in between the wetland area. It says possible gardens area, but it could be anywhere in that area. So at this point, we're just in a holding pattern, waiting for our technical specialists, Zuvik Engineering and Steve Sopelak, to put together the technical specifications for the bid.
Is there a target date to start this excavation work?
We don't have a target date yet until we get the bid specs compiled, which hopefully will be done in the next month. Well, hopefully.
So
By the
another
end of
30
the
days
month.
for bid specs, and then proposals come in another 30 days, and then somebody gets ready to go, depending on weather and
Yeah.
ground conditions.
I'm thinking probably this summer, at middle to the end of like July, end
Mhm.
of July time. And then during that period, we switch over to the steep grant for the barn
Mm-hmm.
and put together specifications for the barn.
Any questions, starting with Chris Duff, Counselor Duff?
Sure. So, and this plan that we're looking at, it's really specific to the area of the barn, and then also the parking lot. Some of the other things we've spoken about, pathways, community gardens. That is a future phase, which would be a different plan. That's correct.
Well, you won't really need you don't have to come back for a formal plan for the community gardens. It's the community gardens and whatever else happens here will evolve, over time.
Right. I guess what.
Not necessarily a formalized plan submitted to an agency unless it's a construction issue.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there might be some activity if folks are looking at putting like a crushed stone path. I'm not sure that we would need the full permit or things like that, but just in terms of setting an expectation on what folks in town can expect. It seems like this year we're prepping for the barn And then some of these other public amenities might follow in the future, probably not this summer, perhaps.
Right, right.
You're
And,
missing the planting season.
yeah. Well, even just things for like the different paths that we had spoken about. But just so folks know that they're not going away, it's just they're being phased in. And then you mentioned the STEEP grant. What's the clock look like remaining on the grant, and when do we think we're going to have our barn raising?
We have 4 years to spend that money for the STEEP grant. I already had requested one extension last year, about 8 months ago, and I can get another extension. That's gonna, we need to figure out how to bid that. You know, the original grant was prepared with a prefab, like Cloder Farm or barnyard type barn, you know, to try to, just to get a design down and send it out to the state and say, this is what we plan on doing. We could bid it out that way as a prefab, or we can maybe try to bid it out as a, you know, a free-form barn, you know, stick timber construction. I have a feeling the prices since that grant was compiled have increased tremendously. So the $140,000 might not be enough to build that barn the way we want it to be built.
So the prefab might have gone up for certain, the price tag there, but
Right.
if we go free-form, we might be able to entice contractors to assist, and so we could maybe have a combination that would be still within our budget, but maybe we could get that going, because there's been some interest expressed, we just haven't worked on it yet, because we're not at that stage.
Yeah, you had mentioned that you were approached by several builders in town, right?
Correct.
That were interested in volunteering some of their skills and time for that barn project. And you're right, if we can work that in to the grant, that would be a tremendous asset.
So
A
we
tremendous
have the.
leveraging of money.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not trying to put anybody on the spot, but we have some trades organizations in town, and we have some pretty good-sized electrical, different kinds of trade contractors in town that would like to see it, you know, like to be able to do things. There's some suppliers in town that would like to support the contractors with gear. So it's conceivable, if we're under the right plan, we might be able to get materials and utility hookups and things like that, you know, where right now we just have a barn, you know, that comes without anything, right? So we want to be prompted by you when the time is right to
Right.
start really getting on that.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that I just want to verify that
Yeah,
the volunteer work is separate from, we're not using state money for that, so that we don't need to worry about
Bidding and all that.
their bidding requirements and CHRO requirements.
yeah, yeah.
It's
If you
not
can,
part of
if you
the
can
grant.
parse that out, then
Yeah.
that will let us know what we can do.
And then just my last question, in terms of what the public can expect, well, when do we think that, do we feel that the members of the public would be able to access this portion of the site sometime this year after the work is done, or does it need to be after, you know, what's our milestone for that? Is it when the barn is up, when the site work is done and the ground's capped? What does it look like?
I think as long as the work is finished and the area is safe, you know, I think they may be able to access the area before the barn is constructed. We don't want cars piling in there, right? You know,
Right.
but you know, passive access, as long as the construction is safe, the area is safe, and you know, people aren't camping there.
Right.
Bonfires and,
But once the ground is capped and the the grading's been done and everything's growing
stabilized,
back and
right.
stable, there'll be some milestone where someone wants to go down there and, I don't know, have their lunch and look at the field, they can,
Right.
okay.
And imagine what will
Yeah.
it look like in a year later.
Looks better than it did a year ago, that's for sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly?
Oh, thank you. Yes, Ray, looking at the community gardens, which we're obviously not going to get to for this planting season, but can we be doing work concurrent with the remedial work, which is going on, which seems to be quite a distance? Or can we even, I don't mean, can we think about planning it, or how we're going to run it, or are we going to have, the the bylaws, or there's a lot to do before people can even go in and put a shovel in, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lot to be organized and agreed upon. Can some of that start this year?
I think it has to. There's,
good.
my major concern with community gardens is, what you just mentioned, who's going to manage it, how it's going to be managed, who's going to pay for that management. Usually it's managed by another, like the garden club. They have people at the garden club that are very interested in community gardening. We have distributed information on that. Maybe we can have somebody come in and address the committee about how we'll go about setting up something to a management model for that. Because usually there's money involved, right? People.
I don't know. I have no
many
idea.
times. And it has to start out small. This is a large area, so
Right.
you'll have a lot of,
Even just saying
Lot of
they're going to be
fluff.
10 by 10 or 12 by, I know there are a lot of steps, so
Yeah.
if we can get started on it. And then if
Absolutely.
we could, somehow publicize through the town website or whatever, our progress, because people spent all this money, and a couple of us know what's going on, but not a lot of people possibly. So I think it would be nice to let them know, their tax dollars at work sort of
I
thing.
mean, I think you're bringing up a good point, is that when we're ready to do that, we'd probably have to gauge the interest first. If there's more interest than we have space, we might have to do a lottery the first year. But certainly, we have a set of community garden rules and regulations from our earlier meetings, so we need to
That's it,
resurrect
yeah.
those, because in there, it's definitely rules and definitely a lease. And I definitely think that we should charge something so that somebody doesn't take up a space and hold it, right? So if you're willing to pay for it and you're gonna use it, you'll get value out of it. I mean, it doesn't have to be major, but it has to be enough for a commitment,
Sure,
you
sure.
know?
And then would offset possibly the management fees, management costs to us,
Of
whoever's
the-
going to run this
Of the
thing.
garden, yeah. Because we have to make water, we're gonna try to make water available with those wells that are on site at some point, but
Pretty
that
far
costs
away.
Pump,
money.
with
you
a
know.
pump, that'd be
So
cool.
there's a lot of little things there.
But yeah, so that's just my point. If we can start thinking about that,
yeah, that should be done. I mean, we can start that like now.
Could we,
exactly.
sorry to hop in, could we refer that to perhaps a Sustainable Rocky Hill Subcommittee? I mean, they are kind of based on community engagement, different types of projects. I mean, I don't know if they're interested in it, but they're doing some of this stuff already, even pursuing.
Well,
But-
Sustainable works under 12, I think it's 12 modules established by Sustainable CT. So we're trying to earn points in each module. Now, if this comes under one of the modules, then it's a good target. I guess that would be how we have to look. For instance, we're looking, and this will come up, we're looking at composting, and that is under sustainable, action. So this might be a, kissing cousin to composting, and it might just work, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think staff usually directs us when it needs to move to the next committee.
Yeah, I mean, they can be involved, but we need to have, as far as the community garden process goes, we need to have some experts guide the committee first.
Yeah, we're probably not the right ones at this point. We're good with compost, but I don't know about that. Thank you.
Did you want to bring up the compost thing
Oh,
for a minute?
well, very briefly, or maybe not so. There's a deep pending grant, but it turns out it can't exactly be used. It's got one purpose, the separation of your refuse. We're looking at composting, starting in the schools. There's been a lot in the papers. I'm sure you've seen the articles. Kids are getting gung-ho about this. So we're just trying to start small. Could we do it in the high school? Could we do it, the community center? If you've ever worked down there, volunteered, the amount of food that gets thrown in the trash is heartbreaking. So we've a core group of us have been to Quantum, the anaerobic digester, to Blue Earth. You don't want to wear your good shoes when you go visit these places. No, it's been very interesting. We also made a presentation at the Board of Ed to target the schools, and the high schoolers are very interested in helping, and then Sustainable is working on it further. So, at the Board of Ed, the mayor talked to me about, when we plan this, think about having composting here. We have a small compost area behind the community garden on Old Main Street, but that's certainly not town-wide capable, and this would be good. Now, who knows where the right place is? Once we get the garden set up, then we can decide where compost should be, how close, how far. But I just wanted to put it out there on our radar that we do want to, we want to do composting. We're going to start in the school system, hopefully, and we want to have a place to put things.
Where is this compost? Is it food products?
It's, right, it would be just food. Actually, it could be paper, leaves, as you may, probably many of you know, you really want the mix of leaves and organic because of the nitrogen and the chemical reactions and all of that. So that will be determined, we don't take meat and fish and that sort of thing in local composting. In the
Okay.
commercial ones, they take it because they turn it regularly. If you don't turn it, it's like silage, that it gets combustible in there.
I was just thinking of rodents.
Well-
You got food products, there's gonna be rodents coming.
Right, so it's, I mean, if you look at the one that's behind the, at the food pantry, I mean, it's eggshells and bananas and coffee grounds and vegetable peelings, so it's not terribly smelly, and
This one
flies.
sounds like if it's going to serve the whole town, it's going to be pretty significant.
Well,
And it needs to, there's quite a few issues would have to be,
exactly.
managed.
The point is, right now, let's just think of having an area. We're quite far from how much, from where, all of that, but she just said, let's think about an area.
And how about the transport of that, if it's a bigger?
Again, not determined, of course, then you're talking expense and you're talking deciding, and that's way beyond, our reach, but then it is an economic issue, and you get to thinking, do we deal with Blue Earth on some kind of a contract basis and get compost back to use, the finished product, which saves us transportation costs to Pennsylvania or Ohio or wherever our hauler takes everything. If we're dividing out certain portions, we're saving money. It's a big, complicated spreadsheet issue.
yeah, we can talk about that.
Another time.
And then we'll have Joe Lentini also involved.
I think
Okay.
it would be a lot if we're looking at
Yeah.
this serving as the municipal compost pile.
No, it would be,
It kind of gets away from the purpose of the farm, but I can see your point. It may be, that composting being an element of the whole plan.
right, yeah. And maybe people, if they just had their, rotten tomatoes and bad squash that they couldn't salvage, could put it in the compost. Maybe it could be restricted. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Counselor Malaro?
A lot of topics already were brought up, but there's one in particular, it's maybe a silly question around, is there any interference based on the existing farmland functions? In other words, based on building out of the site and what's happening with the farmlands there? Is there a timing component to that? I'm assuming that'll be part of the plans.
Oh, you
but-
mean with the farmers farming the?
Yeah, yeah.
No, I think from what all the three farmers come in from Rhodes Landing. So that's way on that's on the opposite end of this property, so I don't think there'll be a conflict there at all.
So
But
it wouldn't be
we-
part of the plan, in other words, because it's
Part of
exclusive.
the bid specs will require that access to the farm plots have to be maintained, just like any other construction project along the commercial corridor. They have to maintain access to the business. They'll have to maintain access. We have to maintain access to those fields, even from New Road.
That's all I got.
Fran? Whalen?
Just looks great. Glad things are finally wrapping up and moving forward. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, thank you.
Brian
guys.
Clemens?
I agree. I'm just glad things are finally moving forward here, and we're hopefully by end of the summer, this project is remediated. I do like the composting thing. Perhaps we do the composting. We started a small one for just those people who have a plot.
Yeah.
They can compost it because then they can use that compost back in their gardens, correct? For fertilizer?
Sure.
So if you make it small, it's just people, might be an incentive for some people to lease or rent a plot that they will have a composting component there for them. Obviously, certain guidelines of what can be composted in there, but certainly a start. That's all I have.
Good point, good point. I just think that the sooner we can have the walking path established, that would be the access that maybe Counselor Duff was inquiring about. So as soon after the July start, where everything gets graded off and excavated, and if we establish the walking path, that would be one thing to open up to the public.
We could make
And a
steps.
deliverable, that would be a deliverable to our constituents, to our residents.
So we could have phases. Phase 1 would just be able to walk on it, you know, in unspecified areas.
Yep.
And then maybe Phase 2 is the barn, and then we.
And we might be able to outline where the garden's going, just, rope it off and show where it is, so
Get
people
them
have an idea
enthused.
it's coming.
Yeah.
And get a sense of motion. So, cool. All right. Ray, anything else we should talk about at this meeting, or do I need a motion to adjourn?
Maybe not for this committee, but for the Memorial Naming Committee.
So we have applications in for that?
We have dozens of applications.
Yes.
Dozens.
Oh, now so we'll have to call the naming committee together, and you'll have to bring us up to speed on
Yeah,
that.
there are
Okay.
dozens of names that were submitted probably 2 months ago.
One big rush.
Yes.
So is that for both, because we've been talking about naming the site itself, but then also the structure?
It's for the farm, just the farm.
So this,
not-
the
not
names you've
barn.
received are for
For the farm.
For the site?
Do we have a Yukon finalized plan? I don't think I saw it.
It was the last set of plans that he presented, but I can.
Did he
email-
change, he had to change the roadway or something, correct? The
Yeah,
entrance?
This plan is based,
Off of that?
and vice versa.
Okay.
So those circles are the rain gardens that Yukon had proposed, those near the parking area and all the gravel area. What this plan doesn't have all of the amenities.
Yeah,
It should be here, like the wetland landscape plants for the rain gardens. And, I'm going to try to get a couple of stone walls incorporated into the remedial plan. I'm going to try to incorporate as many amenities as we can into the site work for the grant funding.
Are they designing the plantings as well?
No.
Are we just doing that on our own, or? do
You'll
we
be
have-
doing that on your own, or maybe we can get
Guidance.
Yukon back for another 10 grand to do the plant science, come in and propose a landscaping plan.
About some
well, the
community
Yukon plan
resources
did
that-
designate areas, and they did designate what you might put there. So we
Right.
could follow that as a start.
Yeah, we
But,
can do that. It's not
you know,
really that detailed.
Yeah, no, I think it would be helpful if we, now that we're kind of got everything approved and passed a lot of this, if we could have the final Yukon plan. I know we're not, we're trying to conserve paper, but if we could, if the committee could have the, hard copy of the final plan, the final deliverable from Yukon, I think that would be very helpful to us to,
I
so
have
we have it in our hand.
We all have
Because we had
multiple
changes
copies.
and changes and changes, right? So that would be at your convenience, if, because we have plenty of time here.
If there was a way to put that, you don't want to create the wrong expectation, so if there was a way that we could get a version of that to put online, but with big like watermark draft on it or not final, something like that, that makes it clear that that's not exactly what they're going to see, because it is something that the public did invest in, and we, I think, probably know more, and the folks who watched the meetings at home months ago when we were presenting it probably know a little bit more, but it would be good to be able to, if someone has questions, you send them the link, it's on the site. And then, they know it's going to look something like that. Not exactly, but this is what we're going towards, and those milestones that you mentioned.
Yeah, you just have to make sure people know it's a draft.
Watermark draft, big letters. Yeah,
Because someone's turn around and say, well, I saw plans and this was going here and it's not there. And,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yep.
But yeah, I think the public needs to know something. I mean, again, we think we know what's going on.
We'll see.
But, I get asked all the time when people bring it up to the farm, like, well, I'm on this committee. And they're like, what?
And the community garden materials from the garden club that we had at one time. I don't know, you might not still have them?
I have.
Okay, so those two things, the Yukon and the community garden,
You want me to email?
rules and regs.
Can you email
Can I
it?
email you the community garden
Yeah.
regs?
Because that was,
That good with everybody?
Yeah, and I think we should start sooner rather than later, of start buttoning up how the garden's gonna be formatted, with bylaws, whatever you wanna call them, so when it's time to come, we're ready to roll right into it and not have to spend more time coming up with that stuff.
and maybe invite comments, because there are probably people out there a lot smarter than us on running community gardens. No offense to anybody, but, with the more
Oh, no.
expertise in it. So, could compile something.
Is there
At the very least, we should ask
Is there
the
a neighboring
farmers.
town that has them?
I'm sorry?
Is there a neighboring town that has?
Cromwell has a big, very nice community garden. I think we got their rules, and maybe Weathersfield. There were 3 sets of towns.
Yeah, Alicia Cornelio had given us a whole bunch of information on
Yeah.
that. I can get additional information from other agencies and towns.
Do we have to didn't we have, as part of this, the Boy Scout project for the bird
Jimmy
tower?
Swift's
Yeah.
tower?
Swifts, yeah.
Do we have to let them know a certain point when they can go on site and?
Yeah,
or
that
they
would
ha-
be-
or They have to let us know when they're gonna do it, but we have to give them the green light anytime going forward.
Right.
Do we
When
know
this
where it
is
is?
finished,
Yeah.
you know,
Do we know where it is on this?
Site down.
not on, we,
To be determined.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is good because we have the existing topography and contour, so we can plan out where things will go in the future.
Cool. Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?